All right, welcome to the podcast. We have Spitfire Trysta Krick. If you wanted to give us a quick freestyle, I know you've had a mic drop moment on your resume, being dragged off by Killicam himself.
I don't have anything in the head top right now, pause, but another day, another day.
Okay,
Using all my freestyling for freestyling about your team.
yeah. So let's go right there. I mean, I was just telling you before we started that you've been ahead of the curve on a lot regarding Philadelphia 76ers over the years. Give me a couple of those heaters that you just dropped from me.
Yeah, I was ready to let go, and I was pretty adamantly against Ben Simmons starting in probably 2020, 2021. And it wasn't just because of the fact that he doesn't shoot, right? Like that was a key piece. Obviously, you need a guard that is not afraid to shoot the three ball, not afraid to hit open shots in general, but also just his attitude and like some of the things that people were saying about him who had known him or had been around him and his family for so long, that he was so used to being coddled, and like his mom said he was a very insular, shy kid who was always running into her arms, right? Like you see that and you're like, oh well, that's not changing. His behavior, he's not going to become a hyper aggressive scorer. So I was ready to let him go pretty quick like. And I definitely didn't want to get rid of Jimmy Butler in order to keep him and Tobias Harris. That was number one. I got crushed over that. People were like, oh, Ben Simmons is a Hall of Famer and you don't understand. He can do everything else but score. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Like, you need him to score. Unless he's your center or your power forward, like that's what he's got to do, right? Even Jokic, who's a center, is a scorer. So that was I think, a very important turning point and a inflection point in my relationship with Philly fans. Was they thought I was just hating, and I'm like, listen, I'm kind of trying to help you guys. You guys got to get rid of him while you still can, while there's still value here. Not after him passing up that layup in the Atlanta series, right? That was when he was at an all-time low. And then I was ready to let go of JoJo right after he won MVP, pretty
Really?
much. Right after.
Really?
Because that's when his value is the highest.
Apex, Joe.
You need to get rid of players, and you're in the building. If you run this team, you're in the building. You know everything that JoJo goes through. His knee hasn't been unswollen in a long time. He's had lower body extremities. He just has the injury bug. It's like he's an injury Velcro. So if you know that and he wins MVP, there's a lot of teams like the Knicks at one point that were clamoring from him. Just fleece them. Just get rid of him at that point. I know he's fucking electric when he's playing on the court and he's healthy, but he's never healthy. So get what you can. Lots of picks, probably some good players, because as of now, you're just kind of in a situation where you're having a very expensive asset that's no longer seen as an asset. And you saw how that was with Ben Simmons when it took forever to get rid of him. So that was another one. And then I was sort of like on the fence. I wanted to kind of like get on the positive, optimistic side of Paul George. But again, like this guy is a combination of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. He's got mental stuff. He's not built for the bright lights. He withers under them. They called him Pandemic P for a reason. He was, again, in a fetal position in the bubble next to his bed because he couldn't handle the pressure. And he has injury issues like Joel Embiid. I don't know why you pay that guy max money. It just seems like there's just been interested in the flashy headlines, trying to win the offseason, trying to win the day, instead of building a roster that makes any damn sense.
Yeah, I mean, you cover a lot there. So we could stick with Philly fans. We could go off on Joe and his contract. We could stick with Pandemic P. I think that's kind of where I want to take that because the fetal position in the bubble is too good of a visual. Um, I did love the signing. I thought that, I mean, Jimmy Butler, the loss of him just simply devastated me as a fan
Yeah.
because He was my favorite Sixer other than Joel at the time, and Joel was still pretty lovable there. It was before the days where you're talking with Mace and Cam about is he truly the most hated player? He was Troel, but there wasn't the, what did you call it? Like egregious flopping and foul baiting. And sort of, I think you called it media babying, where he's just kind of asking for how come people are down on me. But Paul George, to me, filled in at least a little bit of the loss of Butler. And we'll never get over it. You saw what he did in Miami. Anyone who came after you on that take had to eat so much Corvid and Raven and because he took the Miami Heat to two finals, 3 out of 4 conference finals appearances, and if the NBA didn't decide to overrule that Max Strus 3, who knows?
Yeah.
But Paul George to me did make sense. It was a gamble. You knew he wasn't Jimmy Butler at this point. You knew the contract was probably not going to look very good on the tail end. But if you have Joel, you just need lightning to strike 1 year and him to be healthy in the playoffs, and then maybe it makes sense. And here they are. It never made sense from the jump.
Yeah, it's tough because you had multiple guys go down too, right? Like Tyrese Maxey having a reversion to the mean type year after signing a big contract is tough. Joel Embiid not really being healthy even in the Olympics and then not being healthy pretty much the entire season, I think that's alarming because we kind of knew October, November, there's a good chance Joel Embiid's not going to play many games at all this year. There's a lot of like, well, I'm not injured, but there's just a lot of swelling and we're not sure why they're swelling or how we're going to get rid of it. It's like, oh, this is chronic. If this isn't an injury, this is now a chronic problem. And then, okay, then you have Paul George go down with an injury as well. And then he has to cancel the podcast because he's getting ripped in the media. So you got 3 very important players going down, and they're all kind of going down like whack-a-mole. Once one guy gets healthy, the other one goes down. So you don't really know what the potential of the team is fully healthy. But it's kind of like the Clippers with Paul George and Kawhi. You weren't going to know what this team looks like fully healthy because they're not going to be fully healthy. I love the Jared McCain draft pick. Yeah. I loved it. I loved it immediately. I loved him at Duke. I loved him in the NCAA playoff. The kid is a star, like a bona fide star. He's a super hard worker. He's a bucket. I love the way he plays. I think he's a star. Yeah, I think like his personality is right up there with Maxey in terms of you love to be around him. He's making everyone happy. He's all smiles. That's the kind of mood I think is going to be a lovable player for a Philadelphia market, which is like kind of harsh, right? And these guys allow it to sort of run off their back like water.
Like you were talking about with Ben Simmons, I forget the name of it, but there was that documentary that sort of followed him. And
yes.
You did pick up on some of that shyness. Maybe you could see why he would have picked LSU instead of a Kentucky. And there are, of course, the parallels to be made about Markelle Fultz, choosing Washington. These guys who are, hashtag built for it. And Paul George has not proven that he is. Joel Embiid might be, but we'll never know because the furthest he can get is the first round of the playoffs before he picks up an injury, breaks his face, tears his knee. We've never seen him enter the second round fully healthy, have we?
No. And I think Joel is a killer.
Yeah.
I think he's a killer. I think he's built for that. I think mentally, outside of the foul baiting, and I think maybe all that stuff happened because of injury. You're just trying to figure out a way to like manage the fact that you're never going to be fully 100% there.
Maybe Daryl Morey working with him too.
Yeah, I love his game. I love Joel as a person. I've interviewed him a few times. I love when he's fully healthy. I just think I always imagine the perspective of what a GM want to do in order to maximize their assets and their window and become a true contender. And I think you have to think about these guys like you do the stock market, which is like when they're hottest, unless you really think they're super durable, like a Steph Curry, a guy that you really want to build your franchise around who's giving you zero red flags. Joel Embiid has given us a bunch of red flags, like his attitude towards the media, like getting back and forth, getting physical, getting sensitive, his injury issues, not really taking accountability when things go wrong. Him and Doc Rivers both were very quick to throw other people under the bus. Those are not guys you really want. That's not the kind of trait that you want in a head coach, and that's not really a trait that you want in your marquee franchise guy.
Yeah, the beginning of the seasons, Joel tends to get barbecued by former players who say, "What is this? He's going to load manage. We didn't do that." I think you posted Kevin Garnett saying as much. 82 games is the job, bro. This is when you rest in the summer. But then he does load manage to a degree, but then he pushes himself to play through an injury, like we saw when the noise was getting too loud that he doesn't play in Denver. And just to correct your guy Mace, who says he never plays in Denver, I did a little deep dive and I saw that some of this was legit. He had COVID one time, he tore his knee one time, etc. But in my opinion, the bigger problem is pushing too hard in the regular season for some of these 30 and 10 streaks, for some of these, let me make all NBA. Let me show people that I don't duck Jokic, and then I play on this injury that I should have listened to Kawhi Leonard on. Or, I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like Nick Nurse has been preaching the message that Kawhi Leonard was willing to preach to himself in 2019. You mentioned recently that, Joel Embiid got a diagnosis from some team doctors that was not accurate. And Kawhi Leonard, on the flip side, the guy we're always hoping Joel will model and load manage like 2019 Kawhi, sat out every 4 games. Kawhi went out and got some external doctors, just like he did back in 2017, 2018, right? He doesn't necessarily trust the team doctor who's employed by his boss. He wants to go and find out as many opinions as he can, and maybe Joel has done that subsequently, but something's different because Kawhi now looks like 2019 Kawhi when he's right, and Joel is. You were recently wondering, is he ever going to play at an NBA level again?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the greatest comparison that you can have because Kawhi ended up hiring this guy Keith Pine in 2019 and in the offseason and when he was with Toronto. And Keith Pine also worked with Clayton Kershaw when he was dealing with those shoulder injuries. Keith Pine's legit. And someone that I know has been sort of like a mentee to Keith Pine and had been talking to Joel's camp about working with him specifically to manage his knee, to get him back on track. I think they did some workouts and they were talking about maybe having a more like direct one-on-one relationship outside of the team doctors. And I said, okay, well, if my buddy works with Joe, I think Joel will be quite healthy because these types of things are very chronic and they're systemic. And if you don't know why they're happening and where they're coming from, it's just going to get worse. And Keith Pine's one of the best in the business. Anybody who's worked under Keith Pine, I would put my my faith in. But and then in terms of the Sixers medical staff, we've seen over and over again that they just let us down. Like how everything went down with Zaire, how everything went down with Markel, how everything went down with Jalil, how everything has continued to go down with JoJo. Like we had Ben Simmons and his back issue and his surgery. I don't know how much.
Ben Simmons came back from that in the bubble to play in August and
Yep.
immediately what is his kneecap.
Yep. So he's and that like the like spinal sort of chain, this kinetic chain goes from, your back all the way down to your hamstrings, your knees, your ankles, your feet. So like you can have a knee injury and that could be connected to your back. There's a lot of like nerdy stuff around that. But I don't trust this team doctors at all for Philadelphia.
Different doctors over the years. I mean,
Yep.
it wasn't the same doctor that allowed Joel to play on a torn meniscus in his rookie year. And it wasn't the same people then later
Yep.
who said, you're greenlit in Golden State, even
Yep.
though we're watching him. There's tweets going around of him having what looks like these non-contact injury plays.
Yep.
still in the ball game in the fourth quarter, down 10. To me, that was worse than the Knicks series. That was worse than
Definitely.
the Olympics. That's where it really started when Kuminga fell on his knee. He shouldn't have been in the game.
No, he shouldn't. And I think it's not the people in charge that are in the medical system within Philly. It's the system, which is they don't want to pay the highest qualified guys and they want to push guys back to come back for whatever reason. Then maybe that's monetary, maybe that's because they're getting crushed in the media. Who knows? But maybe Joel just needs to change the scenery, change the doctors. I know that Casey Smith from Dallas is now in New York. I know New York doesn't have any interest in Joel right now, but like you need to find the knee whisperers because right now whoever's there in Philly, and I actually heard that Joel Embiid had some friction with Nick Nurse. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but from what I've gathered from people who I know inside the league, there's something going on there as well.
Yeah, the extent of my knowledge, and I want to quickly come back to that, but I would just add finally on the Embiid bit in terms of injury. Just the flip side to that perspective is I think the team would have preferred he be more open to load management. I
Yep.
think a lot of it is them saying, if you wanted to criticize Morey overarching, and I'm sure you do, we'll get to that too, but he had the reputation of allowing Harden to party way too hard and not take things as seriously as others would have liked him to have. And then in Philly, we got reports that Tyrese Maxey thinks that Joel's late to everything, and in my opinion, Joel has a lot of say, and from what I've heard, Joel has a lot of say about when he plays. And if
Yep.
we're weeks that he cares too much about the noise and
Yeah.
former players chirping, then that's a problem because he's playing too hard on injured things when we all want to see him in the freaking playoffs. But to your point about Nick Nurse, you know, remember that article? And Joel was like, whoever leaked that is a piece of shit. Fast forward, and I've heard you talk about, maybe Joel will never return to an NBA level player. Maybe he will not be in Philly again. But one thing you are more confident of is that he won't be playing for Nick Nurse, which I thought was really interesting if you suspect that maybe Nick Nurse would
I
be.
think Nick Nurse might have been the one to leak that. Yeah, I think he did. I mean, you can just kind of tell based on some of the language that was used about like elephant in the room. And that was something that Nick Nurse talked about in his book, The Rapture. And so
Yeah.
you're like, oh, these are some of the same pieces of language here where you'd have to be really freaking savvy for it to not be him and use those exact same words to make it seem like it's him. So I've heard that there was friction there, and not just because of the leaked article. I just don't think he likes playing for him, and for in terms of what I've heard. I have no idea. I've not talked to either one of them. But to your point about Embiid, really quickly, just back to his injury, I think a key piece, obviously, is Joel and how much work he's willing to put in. And that's an issue that we've seen with Anthony Davis as well, right? You have to be the one. You can't just go to PT. Like, it's not someone else working on you. It's you listening to the doctors and those therapists to do those things. That's very hard work, especially when you're injured, painful, strenuous, boring, lots of activity.
Depressing.
Yeah,
You make all this
depressing.
progress and you're ready to go, and then you tweak something else. Like you said, it's all this kinetic chain, the spine, the legs, the knees, the feet. For him, it all comes back to the feet too. And
Yep.
it's depressing when you have another one of these, which he has talked about. But yeah,
And it's like, will you continue to press forward and have the same level of dedication and the same level of like that Mamba mindset to get back on the floor? Because the people who have that, they figure out a way. I mean, and I think Kawhi's kind of an outlier because he's just had so many very severe injuries. So what we're seeing though is kind of the consequence of how much work he's put in and where he's at now, looking like you said, 2019 levels, bouncy, able to play 40 something minutes, and just kind of a real impact player in a way that we're really hoping that someone like Embiid could get back to that level.
yeah, and it could be the body size. People looking at
Yep.
Joel's injury and the idea of osteoarthritis, bone on bone. We talk about guys who have come back from that, like Chris Paul. He's not as big as Joel.
Yeah.
Kawhi's had that quad knee tendonitis going back to his first finals MVP season, where they called it jumper's knee at the time, and it morphed into this thing that was kind of the quad and kind of the knee and patella. but he's gone into fuck it mode a couple times and just
Yep.
said, I'm out. I'm not playing for 6 months, and I'm going to take off next season too if I need to, and I'm not going to listen to anyone. Joel, on the other hand, says, I'm going to appear in every game to prove I'm an 82 game player. And the fans are like, don't do that. We don't care. Don't want it. Much rather you be a 65 game player and just make it to round two.
Yeah, I agree. And Joel probably has to lose some weight. Like his body size is a key thing. You're not going to ever go from 7 feet tall to 6'5", but the amount of weight that he has and his body fat percentage, I don't think helps his cause either.
5 years, 300 million, and the elephant in the room for you and I right now is, does any of what we're saying even matter anymore? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's too late.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the question. And what do you do if you're the Sixers? Like, yeah,
What would
and
you
I
do?
guess the best case scenario is that he can never play again. And for them, like in terms of, he's never going to be fully healthy, right? Versus on, off, on, off, on, off again. You can't plan for him. You can't not plan for him. Best case scenario
Talking
for you.
Stephen A. Smith here, just go retire. Best case for
Yeah, I mean, best case for the Sixers that they can get, medical exemption. That's the best case. Best case for Joel is probably he goes somewhere else and figures out a way to be a 55 game a guy.
put a team like
Yeah.
Charlotte on the map or something.
Man, where would that be? Maybe a team like. That's a great question. I know the New York doesn't want to. Yeah, I mean it would be a smaller market team, right? It would be a team that is in need of like a star. Charlotte isn't a bad, like a Washington Wizards, right? Like somebody with cap space, somebody with young players, somebody where he doesn't necessarily feel like he's in the spotlight every night. Kind of like you saw with Ben. So like a Utah, maybe, somewhere he's not on national TV every night, but he's able to do what he loves to do, and maybe a place with very little distractions too.
Yeah. All right. So you talked about early in the season, I think it was maybe February, where you started putting the fork in PG, the PG and the Sixers win the offseason idea.
Yeah.
Not only did you put a fork in it, you might have put a fork in PG himself, asking is he the worst contract in the NBA? And now we have this Joel one. Do the Sixers potentially have the two worst contracts in the NBA?
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I mean, I think Bradley Beal's one of them too, because you can't trade him. You're not physically allowed to trade him, so he's up there too. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about guys making super max money that can't stay on the floor, and I'm not sure who would want to trade for them and what you'd get back. And now you're thinking to yourself, well, man, maybe LA actually did everything that they should have done by just letting him walk out the door and not taking any money back. And I mean, you just sign these guys. So if you're the Sixers, you can't really do anything about it. They're under contract for another 4 years. So yeah, I think they are the two worst contracts in the NBA right now.
Yeah. All right. So
Tough.
I think there's still a 34, correct me if I'm wrong, 32 or 34% chance that the odds-on favorite to win the West and maybe the whole thing, or last I checked, the Thunder will get the Sixers pick. And
Wow.
so there's about a 64% chance they'll get to keep picks 1 through 6.
Yeah.
What would you do? All right. So what would you do if you got Cooper Flag, and then what would you do if you got someone else, essentially?
I mean, I think Cooper Flag is obviously best case scenario. But remember, the Atlanta Hawks last year, they were a play-in team.
Yeah.
And they found a way, somehow the lottery gods blessed them with the number 1 overall pick, even though it wasn't necessarily a very impactful draft. And they ended up getting a guy that a lot of casual fans still don't know, and Zachary Ricochet.
Not
But
just
that's not.
casuals. I've asked a lot of people who was the number 1 pick last year, and they can't tell me.
Some people think it's Alex Sarr because for so long it was going to be Alex Sarr. So that's a possibility. I think Cooper Flag's a game changer, right? Like you now have a Paul George kind of wing that you can slot right in, and you don't have to play Paul George really very many minutes at all. He can maybe come off the bench, and you've kind of like balanced out that ability to money like balance, right? Like Paul George, not super available, getting paid a lot. Cooper Flag, very available, very durable, and on a super cheap rookie deal. I think if you can get Dylan Harper, You still get Dylan Harper. I think even with the amount of guards that you have with the Quentin Grimeses of the world, maybe you want to keep him. Then you've got obviously Tyrese Maxey and McCain. Maybe if you don't keep Quentin Grimes, you roll those three guys out at the same time. Dylan Harper's 6'6". He could play a little wing. He could play all three, 1, 2, and 3. You'll be a little undersized, but I think that's okay. And Jared McCain will come back from injury, and maybe you just have Dylan Harper play in the meantime. So I like him. I like Ace Bailey a lot as well, like another wing, another Brandon Miller type. I like that for this team. I think you have a lot of needs, right? I don't think there's any center that I would take in the draft, including Derek Queen. If you're Philly, I think you just don't want to really mess around with that. I don't think there's nearly enough upside. And who else would I really like? I don't really like the Trey Johnsons of the world. There's only a few guys I really feel like would be game changers for Philly. And if maybe you could figure out a way to trade that pick, if you've got like the 6th overall. But here's the thing. Two things can be true at once. The Sixers have had top 3 picks and squandered them. And they've also had picks that looked like they weren't that good that they've done really well with. So it really did. Yeah, Maxey is a key one. McCain's a key one. So you're talking about in the teens, in the 20s. So maybe you move back. Maybe you find value there and you just accumulate draft capital because this is a team that really is quite overpriced. And if you have a super expensive early lottery pick, you're not going to be able to sign the Yabuselis of the world. You're not going to be, if you want to, you're not going to be able to re-sign Kelly Oubre or Quentin Grimes. So maybe you drop back into the 20s and get somebody valuable there, trade that pick, and then accumulate future assets as well that are cheap for the future.
Yeah, thinking like, maybe they would have taken Jalen Williams had they known, but Leon Rose traded back from, was it number 9?
12? Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he accrued enough to get himself into that Donovan Mitchell conversation. It looked like he could have had it done if he was willing to deal Barrett and those 3 or 4 picks. And then wound up using 5 of them on Mikal.
Yep.
Who you were wondering most of the season what's going on with this boy's shot.
Still wondering.
Yeah, I still believe in him. I think he's a winner, and I think he has a chance to get back out there. But something's going on there. I don't know what. It does seem to me look like, sometimes you hear Mike Breen say OG Anunoby is so stoic, he can't tell if they're up or down. And I see the same thing with Mikal. I'm like, does he not care about this moment? This is a big moment. His affect is very, but anyway, yeah. I don't know which direction to go. I'll tell you this, I do believe, and from what I've heard, that they do want to see it and see if they can get it together, because the idea of blowing it up, nobody wants that at this point.
Yeah.
And so what that could look like, I suppose, is like you said, undrafted, they could trade 3 firsts, 3 swaps, 9 second-round picks. Maybe you throw in McCain, where a team who's like, we know he's going to need some time for his meniscus to heal. We have time. We'll give you player X. If there was an Aaron Gordon out there who could give Joel the weak side rim protection, some backup 5 minutes, and occasionally stick a 3, some people have asked, is that a guy like Jeremy Grant? But I don't know exactly what they would be looking for or who they'd be looking to trade or how big they want to go. I guess you could float the idea of PG and a couple picks for Kevin Durant, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of trying to figure it out. But the problem, I think, for Phoenix is kind of like, well, now you're just sort of trading similar things, like expensive assets. They're already in the second apron. They're up against it. Maybe it's a 3-team trade. And Paul
pick in PG.
Yeah, exactly. I think 6 pick PG, maybe some seconds in the future to get. I think probably Phoenix is going to want to get greedy considering what they gave up to get him. But I think Kevin Durant obviously helps this team a lot, right? Yeah. He's a lot more durable and a lot more consistent and definitely a killer than a player like PG is, and we've kind of known that. But I think there's going to be players available. I think there's going to be stars that want out. Like I could see a Bam Adebayo wanting out. I could see a Giannis at some point wanting out. Dame Lillard, I could see him wanting out. There's a lot of players right now who are going to kind of question what their future is with the franchise that they're on. Who that player would look like to be the best fit if you are keeping Joel Embiid. There's a lot of front court options that you can't really go to. Like I don't think Giannis and Embiid would work, right? So that
Sure, Daryl would
even
try
if
it.
you could get them, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'd be down to try it if they could.
I think a
But
lot of teams would try some weird thing and sign
sure,
someone else. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'm kind of mixed on Daryl Morey as a whole.
Yeah, let's
He's done some good things. He's done some shitty things, and like he's great on the margins. But I feel he's just too player friendly.
okay.
And yeah, I think you've seen guys kind of like wow out like the James Hardens of the world and they develop bad habits. And if Daryl Morey's paired with the Jimmy Butler, then he doesn't need to really like put Jimmy Butler in line. Jimmy Butler's putting himself in line. But it's
Trying to
these
get him on
yeah,
Houston from Minnesota, 4 picks, but
right.
we were all crummy picks.
Right. So, I don't know. It's if you could have gotten Jimmy back at the deadline, that would have been incredible. That would have been an incredible win.
If Jimmy had put the red, white, and blue in his hair, that's a lot of. What did he do? The
Yeah,
orange?
could you imagine maybe you traded Paul George over to Miami and a bunch of picks and like you get Jimmy Butler back together and maybe, all of a sudden Joel Embiid is taking his recovery process a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, he could be the number one. I mean, he has been a top 5 player in the NBA once playoffs arrive over the last half decade since he left Philly.
Yeah,
Easily. Yeah, I think that could have worked. And I think until Joel went down, Jimmy would have enjoyed the landing spot. But
definitely.
then the recent injury, and I'm hoping for the best for him there because I love watching him in the playoffs. I think Steph and Jimmy versus Oklahoma would be must-see TV every moment.
Fingers crossed, really. Fingers crossed.
For Jimmy buckets, Jimmy primetime. But yeah, you could tell I'm still sad he's not in Philly. But I'm very
Even Minnesota fans are still sad that he's not there. Chicago fans are still sad that he's not there. Jimmy Butler is I think Miami fans are still sad that it worked out the way that it did. Jimmy's one of those special players who there's not that many guys in the NBA who elevate to a certain level when the lights get brightest and they don't really need any push to do that. There's a lot of really talented players that are happy to coast. And Jimmy I think it's probably 5% of the league that are this way. And Jimmy's probably at the top of that list in terms of athletic ability versus grit and resilience.
giving me goosebumps here. I'm getting Jimmy fever. I want to watch him play now. That was
Yeah.
very well said. Yeah, he's a special player, and like you remember when he was new in Philly and they played the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. Joel missed a game with I forget. He was the play against Robin Lopez when he tried to
Oh, yeah.
surprise him, maybe I forget. And oh no, that was 21. I guess it was still coming back from knee tendonitis, and Jimmy was carrying the show, and the crowd was just chanting Jimmy Butler, clap, 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 because they took to him immediately. And you have some passionate words for Philly fans on your resume, don't you?
I do. I think there's just the fan base is so delusional. And I don't think all of them, but like the worst ones are delusional. And they hate me because I told the truth and they just always come for me. So I feel like maybe I root against, it's sort of a love hate. I root against those fans, but I root for JoJo. I root for the real ones that really are not delusional, that see the reality, the people that I meet in real life versus the internet. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing place to be that passionate about anything and an amazing place to care about your sports team that much. And I'm glad that they came to their senses about Ben Simmons.
I think yeah, you were right about that. I'm going to just quote you here. I think the fan base stinks. They're egregious. They're aggressive. They stink. I don't like the fans. They turn their backs on people. We can hate Ben Simmons, but if you hate Ben Simmons, we're coming for your kids. We're coming for your mom.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. I did say that. I stand by it. I stand by it. Because it's kind of like, well, you can't say crazy ass shit about Ben Simmons and then tell me you're coming to slit my throat if I say the same thing. It's fucking insane. It's insane.
And there's something to it. Daryl Morey has spoken about it. He said at one point he was terribly worried for Tobias's mentality when the fans, crumble cookie Tobias and booing him in home games. And, they've already got kind of a chilly stadium if you've ever been to Wells Fargo Center because of the hockey. And they turn on people and they are hard to play for. And now you see Tobias outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He's like and fans are driving themselves nuts. But do you think there's something to that there? Do you think the fans?
Yeah. I think that the environment, any working environment matters, no matter what the place is, no matter whether you're working in tech or working in basketball. I think the ownership team matters, the team around you matters, accountability, like just what it feels like to be there. And the fan base in basketball is a key piece of that. And so you see what Detroit fans are like. We've had it bad for so long. We won 17 games last year. We know Tobias Harris by name, but we don't really know much about his game. And now he's over here playing better than Paul George. And the fans are just happy to have success. They're happy to have Cade have some sort of pressure taken off of him. And so, yeah, I think Tobias Harris is probably so much more happy to be in Detroit, Michigan than he was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I think probably the fans are a big piece of that.
You're making it a little hard to put one of these on.
Yeah, I know.
It is true, and I was one of those people who were saying stop saying that PG for a max is going to be Tobias 2.0. It's not. We don't know what he is. He's no PG, but this is a great win, and you're only using assets. And fast forward, and you're tanking. All right, at least you tanked, but you could still lose your pick 1 out of 3 times to the best team in the NBA right now, winning by 50 a night, coming back down 29. Man.
Yeah, OKC looks really good right now. I really hope you guys get to keep your pick, though. It's fun when Philly is better. It really is. This is a sad year.
And I just can't help but wonder if Jason Kelsey wishes he played one more season with that tush push. He'd have a second ring.
I know. Good thing that the Eagles won, or you guys would be rioting.
Yeah.
Because the Sixers were kind of back burner. If Philly and the Eagles weren't as good as they were, I think people would be a lot more pissed at how this year went.
Yeah, there would be a lot different vibe down Broad Street. Yeah,
for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun. Do you want to give people a place they can find you?
Yeah, find me at This Heat Check on TikTok. Find me at TRYSTA_KRICK on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, which is Meta's new Twitter substitute. Find me there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you.
All right.